The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to be joined by Zion Solutions Group. I'm going to be joined by Jim Shaw, who's the president and co-founder over there, as well as Jordan Frank, who is EVP and also co-founder over at Zion Solutions Group. And we've had Jim on the podcast before, and I've been on Zion's podcast, the Zion Experience, before as well. And we're going to get Jordan in the loop here today. And we're going to talk a little bit about Zion, what they do for people that maybe are not familiar. We're going to talk about their exciting partnership with Agility Robotics, first integrator out there to partner, I think, with the humanoid robotics company. So we'll talk a little bit about that and humanoid robots in general. And we'll talk about automation and what they've seen this year and also what they're seeing and maybe predicting a little bit going into 2025. So Jim and Jordan, welcome to the show. How are you guys?
Doing good. Doing good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. We were catching up, Kevin. It's like the last time we saw each other. It's been a few months ago now.
Definitely.
And, it's always good to catch up with you. I know we exchange messages all the time and catch up that way, but hadn't seen you and been on video with you for a while. So thanks for having us.
Yeah, definitely. Happy to get you guys on. Happy to connect with you guys always. And yeah, I think the last time I saw you was a little pizza party at Modex. So thanks for the pizza. Definitely, I'll say again.
Yeah.
But it's good to get you guys back on the show. And if people are maybe not familiar with Zion Solutions Group, why don't you kind of give us a little background, tell us what you guys are all about over there?
Yeah, I can start, Jordan, and then you just fill in. So what people would probably most know us as in the industry is a systems integration company. So a full turnkey. We always struggle to how do you explain, there's so many different variations of a systems integrator. So the best way that we can explain it is we can handle it from the original engagement of discovery all the way through the customer experience, customer service aspect at the end. And so what happens in between that is we do a lot of just analysis work, advising work, consulting work up front. You may know what you have a problem. You may know what problem you need looking at to be looked at. I can't talk today, Kevin. What problem you need to look at, or you may just feel like you know you've got a problem, you just don't know where to start, or you may be further along. So we can meet you wherever you're at in that cycle. And then we have a full team of engineers, both industrial engineering, data scientists, if you will, analysts, to mechanical engineers that'll actually go in and design the different technologies we use. And Jordan's team actually catches that. So once we're through the initial portion of discovery, then we work on creating a concept and a solution and a cartoon type design, and that flows into more of a firm design. And we use traditional integration partners, conveyor racking platforms that everybody would know. We've got a lot of partners in robots and technology, like you mentioned at the front. We're on the cutting edge of that, and then software, and all three of those come together for a system. Not every project needs a system, but we had the ability to do is a big system or a small system. And then from there, we go in and we install it. So we got project managers and different people that install it and come back, and then we see it through commissioning, and then we support it post go live. So that's kind of functionally what we do. If you ask me, and then Jordan, I'm going to shut up and let you jump in. If you ask me who is Zion, I would tell you, Kevin, we're going through a business operating system where we've got a coach coming in. We're doing strategy, and we're very in tune to that, of building a company of the future. We've got a great company, great people, fantastic employees, some fantastic partners and customers, but we're all about what's that longer term vision look like. And so we're fresh off putting on paper what's our core purpose and what's our core values. And it's just top of mind for me, but I think it's important to say, who is Zion? So Zion comes to work every day with a core purpose to leave a positive impact on the lives of those we touch. That's the statement we use. And then our core values, which really transcend not only at work, but into our personal lives. Our core values are our foundation of Zion is just that we're bold. We got three core values: to be bold, unwavering commitment, and then better together. So probably should have started with that and then led into tactically and functionally what we do. But Jordan, fill in the blanks. What did I miss, brother?
No, man, I think you did a nice job. I mean, at the end of the day, that's just who we are and what we're about, right? Really nothing else to add other than I would tell you, Kevin, that I'm looking at your shirt back there. Warehouses are sexy.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't see it that way, but man, I agree with it. And some of the sites that we get to do, we get to use some of those cool new robots that I always look at when I tell people I work in warehouses, it's changing, but everybody would always envision that they're these dark, kind of dusty, nasty places, but they're actually pretty cool places. And we're excited to be a part of integrating the new technologies you see out there, along with some of the more traditional stuff. But at the end of the day, that's what we do. We solve problems. We're a bunch of problem solvers, and we really stay within the four walls of a distribution center. Is where we primarily focus, but we have the capabilities to not only design, right, but procure, integrate, manage, support, kind of the whole gambit to hit on what Jimmy was saying.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. And I think, it's great to hear that you're getting that core messaging out there and those principles of the business. And I think, it's really interesting. And I think even, I talked to you last year, Jim, on the podcast, you were expressing some of that too as well. And I think, it's great that you're following along with that. And like you said, trying to build a company that's going to be here well into the future and continue to have those positive impacts on the people that you touch, right? And I think, Jordan, it's so interesting too. You said there, you think that the warehouses are sexy, right? But oftentimes on the outside of the industry, people are like, oh, those, 4 concrete walls with a bunch of cardboard boxes inside, like, how could that be sexy? Right. But when you start to bring some of these things in and you really get, these solutions in place and, these kind of end-to-end designs and systems in place that really start humming, and you start to see like the beauty of that orchestration and the flow of goods through an operation, it starts to unlock, that whatever part of the brain maybe can allow you to think that that's, attractive and sexy in a way. And, I think it's great that you guys are focused on that, and also, focused on bringing some of these kind of cutting edge technologies in there and trying to help operations and businesses understand how to bring that in and utilize that effectively. So when we talk about, some of these partnerships that you have and, looking at some of these cutting edge technologies, pretty big announcement this year, I would say, from you guys. I mean, there's been a ton of buzz around humanoid robotics, obviously, over the last year, 2 years, and they're coming into the space, actually, doing work, and agility is certainly one that I think is leading the way in the warehouse space for sure. But you guys have partnered with them as essentially the first integrator to work with them. So tell us a little bit about how that kind of came about, maybe, and what that means for Zion.
We'll be back after a quick break.
I hope you're enjoying this episode. Do you want more warehouse content delivered to your inbox? Sign up for our new email series called Warehouse Wisdom Wednesday to get an educational series of emails on warehouse basics delivered directly to you every Wednesday morning. Find the sign up link in the show notes.
Yeah, so one of the tasks or one of the responsibilities I have at Zion, in addition to president, we wear several hats, we call it. And one of the things that I'm passionate about is the partner program. So we've got a very in-depth partner program. We really break it up into 3 different channels. We look at traditional integration, we look at robotics and technology, and then we look at software. And inside those, we've got different levels of partners. So we've got emerging developing that we're trying to push up. We got product/critical that sits in the center. And then we've got strategic partners. And it's probably not shocking that the strategic partners are where we put the most effort. They're the ones that we feel are going to solve the most problems. And those are a select few group that we target after. And so in robotics and technology, I'm always looking at the next thing. I'm always looking at what do I think the future is going to be in terms of what technologies are coming in. I think it's a gift and a skill that the Zion Group has had. We were part of bringing some other goods-to-person technologies to the industry 2 or 3 years, 4 years ago that's really taken off. We've worked with several different international companies at different stages of product readiness, industry readiness. And so when we started Zion, which is going back, it's about 3 years ago now, that one of the first things is like humanoids were out there, and there's 3 or 4 companies that are doing it in the U.S. that kind of got a buzz. There's really 5 if you throw it in, but they're all a little bit interconnected, and agility's always been on the forefront. They were the first to really put the product at the trade show. So they showed up at ProMat, had a big unveiling party, and then they were at Modex again. But if you rewind the clock, so the first conversation we had was with Aptronic. Great people. Don't know if you've talked to those guys. They're out of Austin, Texas. Just a good group of people. Came out of University of Texas. We sat in a room with them. The timing, always considered, weren't right at the time with them, but fabulous people. So Jeff is, I'm not even going to say his last name because I'll mess it up, but Jeff's the president and co-founder there. Just a great human being, good people. So we sat in their room, we talked with them. That was really our first humanoid company we talked with. And then we had a common person out at Figure. You've probably seen some, they're all having all these little LinkedIn blasts here. It's like it's who can send out the next video, who can send out the next marketing campaign. So Figure, Brett Adcock, I can't pronounce Brett's name, who was out there. We sat down and we met with Brett out in Silicon Valley and talked to them about where they were going. And they just had a different, again, timing wasn't right. We weren't in the position. It was just getting to know them. But we sat and watched before Figure even had the legs on, before they had the robot standing. And so some of the speed at which they've come into the market is just truly outstanding. So they've got some good stuff going on. Aptronic's got good stuff going on. They're more penetrating in the manufacturing. BMW and then who is it? Is it Mercedes? So been in the room with both those guys, know their plan. Optimus from Tesla's another one. New Elon's obviously doing it. I think there's one other Sanctuary that has made a little bit of noise. Haven't talked to those guys or Tesla, but then we just kept having conversations with Agility. And one of the things that's cool about them is their head of partnerships is a guy named Pete Allen, and he reached out to us. And this industry is all about relationships. And Pete had been at a previous technology type company in Berkshire Gray. And so we had worked with Berkshire Gray several years ago and had a relationship with them prior to Zion, and they connected us. And so he reached out and we had a conversation, and that led to 2 or 3 other conversations. And the timing was right. Where they're at, they're the first company to really do more than just make a video. They're the first one to actually be working in a live production environment in a warehouse at the time, right? They still are in a warehouse, I think. They've got a group of really smart people. So we went and met them at their headquarters, one of their headquarters in Pittsburgh. We talked to them a lot at Modex. And so it just was a natural extension to say, we felt the timing was right to partner. Now they're going through a lot of proof of concepts right now. But where the problems they're solving or where we're seeing ourselves having the ability to help solve those problems. And timeline's still a little questionable, right? Is it next year? Is it the year after? Is it 5 years out? I think you can have a whole discussion around it of who's going to get there first and at scale first. But we felt really good about the team, the product, and the future with Agility. So I think it's self-declared, but to our knowledge, we're the very first systems integrator to work with the very first humanoid company that's been inside of an actual warehouse. And we're pretty proud and pretty excited about it and working really hard with them. So Jordan, you can share a little bit about where we see the future going with them.
Yeah, I mean, I think you did a really nice job of going through those 3 main humanoid companies. That's who you're mainly seeing, right? Figure, to your point, had just a recent announcement of the Figure 02, because we part of what we do is you have to stay in touch with what everyone else is doing to know where they're headed, right? To know where you're in front, where you're behind. And with Agility, we're really excited because they are in a warehouse. And they seem to be focused on building a company that really is going to solve a problem with humanoids. And for us, they are taking a very smart approach, in our opinion, of a crawl, walk, run. Like let's understand. We have an idea of where we think these humanoids are going to work. We have an idea of where we think they're not going to work. But instead of it just being an idea, let's put it into the use, into the test, right? Let's get out to facilities and let's actually fire these things up, have these pilots. And they've done that successfully. And they've learned from it, which is the whole intent. Because we get challenged with, we see them in the trade shows and we see them on videos. They just don't seem to be as fast as humans. They're not going to replace humans. Like, well, that's not their goal today, right? That's a goal. That's their stretch goal out in the future. Right now, they know that they're not going to go into a facility and have a lights out operation. And because of that, we are now in a position that we can offer these humanoid robots. They're robots called Digit to get out into the facility and manipulate totes. And people don't think about totes, but there's a lot of tote movement in the facility. And a lot of it's done with conveyor or other types of robotics now, but there's still just the manual. Think about like if you've got a tote return conveyor line, somebody has to go to that line to pick up that tote and to put it onto a pallet. Yeah, it's an easy task, but it's taking that person away from doing something else that they could do that's maybe better for them or more useful for the operation. So it's looking at these areas that requires human intervention, but it's not necessarily a full-time job. It might be what that person's doing half the time. So instead of bettering themselves in the warehouse and learning how to operate a fork truck, or maybe they want to go on a warehouse, operations type of rotation, they're focused on moving a tote, right? So for us, we see a lot of use cases. We see a lot of opportunity. Pricing seems to be fair and reasonable for what they're doing. They're not asking for everybody to fund all their R&D. So really excited to find the right opportunities and get these things deployed out in the facilities, because every pilot they've had has turned into be a success with a carry-on contract of, hey, we want to continue using this. Don't come and take it. Like, what do we have to do to keep it in our facility? And to me, that's the best win you could ask for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is really interesting to see. And I love that, Jimmy kind of broke down there, like how you kind of explored all the different players that are out there, at least the ones that are kind of bubbling to the top a little bit. And I think it's really interesting to see because, I think I see the same thing, right? That it seems like agility, and I've talked to Pete on the podcast before, and it seems like they've really kind of, I guess, put their flag in the sand, so to speak, for like the warehousing side of things, right? I mean, obviously, partnering with you, and you guys are focused on the warehouse side of things, and then partnership with Manhattan as well, and WMS side, and then, working with the GXO, obviously now, and, having that kind of deployment out there. I mean, I think really proves that, they're, I guess, stepping ahead in that sense, especially on the warehouse side. And I think that's an interesting point there too about, there's a lot of commentary out there, because I think even, the videos out there that you see like on YouTube, I mean, obviously, they get attraction from people outside the industry too, because this is something that is like very cutting edge and we haven't really seen before, like widespread or in like a practical type of application. I see a ton of those comments where people are like, oh, I could do that like 3 times as fast, right? And all those different things. So curious from that perspective, as you guys have put in a lot of systems and you have a lot of experience in the industry. I know, Jimmy, you mentioned earlier, you were, unloading planes at the UPS facility down there and early in your career. And I mean, is there like a misconception, I think, or, is the human mind kind of geared towards thinking like, I need to get this done like super fast. But I think oftentimes when we think about that, like we often do these things quickly to get, kind of like cross it off the list in a sense, but then it ends up kind of sitting and waiting. So do you think that, there's a mindset kind of shift that needs to happen for, the understanding that, yes, maybe Digit is not going to move as fast as I'm going to move as a human, but it doesn't necessarily need to move that fast, right? I mean, how do you kind of view that, and how do you think about like the mindset of the human, I guess maybe changing a little bit to be more embracing of that and understanding like how the technology is actually going to come into play?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take a first stab at that. So from my thought, Kevin, there absolutely is a human mindset thought of it's not going to get there. It's impossible. It's a hurdle we can't overcome. And the reason for that is typically when you see products brought to a market in mass scale with this amount of attraction, they're usually market ready, meaning they can go out and they're going to be great at what they're supposed to do. So if you think about goods to person systems will sit in a kind of shadow mode or hidden mode for quite a while they go through and test it out and make sure that they've got a technology that they can sign up for to hit a certain rate, to be as fast as somebody else, to be as good as somebody else. Because if they don't, and they come out and they got all kinds of problems and issues, they're probably not going to make it. So they have to be very careful about how they go to market. This Humanoids is a whole new way of looking at the distribution center. There is no benchmark other than a human person that you can compare it to. And comparing a robot to a human at this day of age, no one is claiming that they're there. So part of this is, I think it's great that these humanoid companies are getting this kind of attention and market awareness. But at the same point in time, they're not out there saying we're ready to go with 1,000 robots tomorrow. They're simply saying this is coming. We're ready to go test it, ready to get out there. But their goal, I will be clear, is to become as fast as a human operator or very close to it. It's not to always be slower. It's not to always have the same exception rate that they do today. But they're wanting to leverage the real world scenarios to build a product that can become better and better over time, which is just different than what we're used to. If you went and bought a vacuum that claimed that it's better than any other vacuum you've ever used, but we know that today you're going to have to vacuum 5 times as much, you'd be like, oh, I'm not interested in that. I don't want to deal with that. That's our human perception.
Yeah.
Right. So it really takes some big thinkers and some big innovators. And I applaud the customers out there that have signed up with companies like Agility and Apptronic and Figure, because it shows me that they have the mindset of, we know that this is going to be here in the future. We want to be an early adopter. We want to be a part of this movement. And then there's others out there that maybe are just scared to take that step, or there's just a straight up doubters that say they'll never be there. It's never going to happen. But man, if you know anything about technology and you look back to 15, 20 years ago, how many people do you think said, these would be impossible? But you're not going to have a computer in your hand, right? I'm not comparing humanoids to cell phones, right? But my point is that I think in the world of technology, you will always have those people that doubt, and you'll always have those people that dream. And you've seen a lot of those dreamers really come out on top and far ahead of everybody else. Tesla being a good example of that, right? So I think there's a lot of examples of that in the world, but there's a limited number of people that can think the way they need to think to truly be part of a revolutionary product like Humanoids.
Interesting.
Jimmy,
what do you think, Jim?
Else?
Yeah, I mean, you answered it pretty well. I mean, I think I would look at the more functional side of it, Kevin, and say, where does this piece of technology best support and help and assist human beings? And I think you get some initial reactions. One, like the first reaction is, we've all seen this in TV, and you're just like, oh, is it good or is it bad?
Yeah.
I think every human sees it and they go through it and they're fascinated by that. There's something about the ability to try to recreate a human body into a robotic figure, and just we've been preconditioned to it. So I think everybody sees that. Then you look at it as like, okay, well, the next emotion is, it's going to take my job, and how many jobs is this going to take? And I think it's more about supplementing, is the word I was trying to get out a minute ago, instead of replacing. And you hear a lot of technology companies, and that's what we look at it for, is like, it can go solve a problem that frankly humans are better to solve other problems. They let them be where you have to have a high level of cognitive ability, and you're having to make decisions, and you're having to change rapidly, instead of this programmed robotic function that's over and over and over. So you've heard the terms, I'm sure, Kevin. I don't know who to attribute this to, but it's not mine, but the dull, dirty, repetitive, dangerous work. I probably said that out of order. I mean, that's, at the end of the day, we see humanoids solving those problems. We think Agility's super focused on solving those problems in a real way. You mentioned it. It's like, you can make a video, you can make YouTube, you can make it look marketing good. But Agility's doing it, and they've got a very focused plan, and I think they've got a very strategic mindset of the crawl, walk, run, where they're going into it. But at the heart of why we're looking at it, it's not, well, one, I like the new technology. I wear Jordan and this team out because we refine this partnership program. We feel like we're pretty good at it. It's like, we're trying to stay for our customers on the cutting edge of knowing, because they're operating. They don't have the time to go out and just do R&D and research all this. And they certainly don't have the capital to try all these different technologies. And, you've heard some horror stories where it went really bad and went wrong. So we do that for our customers, but we've got a passion to go out and find things that are going to make ultimately our lives easier. And you go back to the core purpose. I know it sounds a little cheesy, and I've been using this the last month, but our focus is to leave a positive impact on the lives of those we touch. And what we do is build systems that help other humans out. Like we build conveyor systems that deliver shoes to people that are on their health journey. We build conveyor systems and racking and storage systems that deliver medical devices to people that may be laying on an operating table that it's life critical, or to get a knee replacement. What we do is bigger. We work with a company that does everything inside of a classroom. We're helping to get classroom supplies and classroom furniture to a school that's going to teach our next generation and our, the best investment we got, which is our kids in the world, right? So we look at it and say humanoids, probably got off a little subject a little bit, but we think humanoids solve a problem of getting people out. I've worked in a warehouse. I know you have too. I've been in the back of a truck, unloading a truck, and I get to the back wall, and then the supervisor told me, all right, go to the next one, and I see a whole another 53-footer in front of me. So it's not good, easy work. So if we can reallocate that labor to more meaningful work and make it safer and make it a higher quality, then that's just like that. That's where we see the future of humanoids.
Yeah.
And it's got to be done in a responsible way. One of the things that we've challenged and asked as me internally is like anytime you have a technology like that, there is a chance that somebody uses it in the wrong way.
Yeah.
We want to be a part of the solution of how they should be used in the right way inside of warehouses and to complement and to help and supplement humans and to make their lives easier in a warehouse. Anybody that's ever worked in a warehouse right now, has been on that concrete, knows exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's not about taking their job. It's about that job isn't the best job. Let me go do something that's a better, higher quality job. That's maybe more meaningful and engaging. It's not that any aren't, but it's like there's some jobs that just are repetitive, man. They're dull. They're not safe on you. Your body wears down.
Yeah.
You can replace parts, right? You don't want to have to replace the body. So
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such a great point there too. I mean, I think it is such a difficult thing. You mentioned, unloading those trucks or loading those trucks, and that's probably one of the toughest jobs in the warehouse, I would say, especially those floor loaded ones. And I think, being able to enable like the human to do more or do something more meaningful, I mean, I think overall is just better for, the well-being of those humans that are coming in to do that work too. And I think it's a great point there you said at the end, is that, you can replace a part on a robot, but you can't easily replace a part on a human, right? And I think that's a great point there. So, we talked a little bit about humanoid robots here and the partnership with Agility, but as we're kind of coming into peak here, as we're recording this, and, I'm curious over the last year, I mean, what are some of kind of the top inquiries you're getting from your customer base or potential clients? What are the requests that are out there in terms of, projects, or what are they looking to try and automate or improve upon within their operations this year?
I spend a lot of time up front qualifying, and we call it prospecting, traditional business development, Kevin. And so a lot of just some themes that we're seeing is labor's not going away. People are they're taking longer to make their investments and to put their investments in it. I think the industry as a whole has kind of seen just a little bit of post-COVID they called it a hangover, just not quite as quick to pull the trigger on investments, but people are still looking to get labor out. I'm seeing in the market, or we're seeing in the market, where customers have multiple distribution centers or nodes or network. You can see it, and they're more consolidating. So there was an effort to get closer to your customer and to have more facilities. And now you're seeing a little bit of an effort back to get in less facilities. And so that's a theme we see. And we're seeing a lot of opportunities for sortation and picking, still one of the biggest areas in the warehouse where people are spending money. And it's been a dynamic I think I've seen since COVID. Is at one point it was about how could you replace productivity and how could you replace labor and spend a lot of time in e-com and retail. So how could you smooth out the peak or handle that peak? But it was more of a calculation about labor and return on investment. And now I think you're seeing more companies focused on, if I can't get my product to market, it doesn't matter if I have a warehouse or my labor, what I spend on it. So we're seeing companies trying to balance that and solve that equation. How do I do it efficiently, but also how do I do it quickly? And those are kind of the three areas that I would call out and see. And then Jordan's team sees a whole lot more. They actually get to work on the fun solutions in the cartoons. I just get everybody excited and say, all right, Jordan, here you go. Go do the magic.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you, Jimmy. And I think those themes are definitely consistent. And I think one of the biggest things, I know we talk about COVID a lot, even still, right? But one of the biggest things that left us with is an unknown or kind of a queasy feeling about the future in terms of, are we going to have growth? Are we going to have retraction? Are we going to have, accelerated growth? Because that's what COVID caused, or what's going to happen? So what that leads to from a solution standpoint is people are scared to commit to a certain, Jimmy mentioned a sorter, right? So scared to commit to a certain cartons per minute rate, which drives the type of sorter you have. They're nervous to commit to any sort of high-end picking technology because it limits how much inventory you have and how many presentations you can bring forward, which yields you a certain amount of units. So the theme has been, how can I build a system without really a forecast and number in mind that allows me to grow but not spend too much now? So it's kind of like, having your cake and eating it too, to an extent. But we've had to get creative with, okay, well, let's look at what you are doing today. And let's say you had this growth. Here's what that would look like. Here's how you could get there, but you don't have to do that today, which is where robotics come in, especially robotic sortation. It's easy to add additional robots. It's easy to add additional destinations or additional induct points. Even with some of the goods to person technologies, there's some of them are scalable, some more flexible. That's been said time and time again, right? It's kind of an old theme at this point. But yeah, I think the most interesting thing over the past probably 6 months has been the consolidation. I mean, a lot of people just have these buildings that they've had for a long time. This wasn't a COVID impulse buy that they just bought it and they were in it. This is buildings that are 15, 20 years old. And now they're starting to say, well, shoot, do I renew that lease again? Can I look to leverage some of my other assets? Can I bring it in? And in some cases, people do want robotics or automation. So they ask, well, if I bring in multiple facilities into one, now I've got the volume that I can justify a higher end capital investment via automation. So it was kind of the hub and spoke spread out all over the place. But now we're kind of coming back to just saying, I don't want to have to manage all these different locations and all these different inventory and all these different labor pools. I just want a building I can walk into that does the majority of my fulfillment. So it's been an interesting theme, I think, that I haven't seen as much, at least as prevalent before, that we're seeing more and more across all different verticals within the industry.
That's really interesting. Yeah. That's the first I've kind of heard that a little bit. And I think that makes a lot of sense too. I mean, as we see that, some of these buildings too, like you talk about, renewing the lease, and now, the lease rates are still pretty high, right? And still up there. And, I think it is like a question of like, how do I leverage some of this technology to maybe reduce my footprint a little bit, but still get, that same throughput, maybe in some cases even better throughput, right? And take advantage of, what I have existing and be able to maximize that cube within the building where, 15, 20 years ago, that was not the easiest thing to do, and there wasn't as many, prevalent solutions out there to access and take advantage of. So that's pretty interesting. So, we talk a little bit about kind of this year, what's happening as we start to go into next year. Are you seeing kind of the same themes carrying throughout, or do you think there's going to be a little bit of a shift? What do you think is really going to be kind of top of mind for people as they look at 2025?
We'll be back after a quick break.
At my current company, I've generated 7 figures in revenue in just 6 months doing all the sales by myself. Just me and Rumi, my secret weapon. Rumi isn't just another meeting app. It's like Zoom or Google Meet, but with AI tools that supercharge my results. Rumi records every meeting, gives me real-time insights during sales calls, and if I've met with a prospect in the past, Rumi's meeting memory answers any questions I have before the call. I don't waste time digging through notes. Rumi preps me instantly. Go to tryrumi.ai. That's tryrumi.ai for a 14-day free trial.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what we're doing right now is bleeding into 25 in terms of that consolidation effort, right? But I do think we've had a lot of success with a lot of like last mile sortation. Seems to be kind of a new vertical popping up of people trying to get into the UPS and FedEx of handling that last mile, and how can they pop up these little facilities? You know, there used to be the buzzword was micro fulfillment, right? And it didn't really take off maybe as much as people thought it would. But that micro fulfillment is now a new word. That's kind of that last mile sortation. So I think we're planning to see more and more of that. But I also think another trend that we'll see is making the most of your vertical cube, which has been a theme forever. But people are looking at it differently now. Maybe not differently, but they're focused more on revenue per square foot. How can I maximize my investment within this facility? You know, I mean, there's great technologies out there that leverage ground level picking, ground level storage, whatever it may be. But people are now looking at, are there technologies out there that aren't overly complex or overly expensive, but still allow me to use my vertical cube, right? So you're seeing some technologies that pop up that are on the lower end of the investment scale. It used to be you had to pay $2 to $3 million for any sort of technology to get put into your facility. But we're seeing options out there now that you can start kind of dipping your toes in at a significantly lower price point. So I think we'll see some attraction of, let me start. So I think everybody went heavy on the technology there for a couple of years. It worked really well for some and not so well for others. So I think the theme that we expect in 25 is more of almost a trial period of some of these new technologies and products that are out there that will lead into longer term high-end implementations.
Interesting. Yeah. What do you think, Jim? You got any thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in line. I think you'll see some, if I talk at a little different angle of it, I think you're seeing a lot of players that were introduced in terms of technology and offerings and different things. I think you're going to see that contract a little bit. You know, it seems like we've got 10 to 15 goods to person type solutions. Everybody's trying to solve it just a little different. So I think you're going to see some market contraction in terms of like who comes out of that. I think you'll have a top tier and there's 3 or 4 that are emerging. And then you're going to have the bottom level of like who's developing the newest twist to it right now. It's going to come into play. So I think you'll see some technology contraction. At some point, everybody got in it and everybody's burning it. But at the end of the day, it's got to go in. You got to make it commercially viable, and it's got to have the ability to scale. R&D dollars and some of that investment only gets you so far. So I think we'll see some of that. So I'm super optimistic. We've got an economist that is part of a trade organization we're part of, Mahita, and they've been pretty much spot on. Nobody saw COVID coming, obviously, but even some of the effects after it, and they're very optimistic about 25 and 26. I think we get through this upcoming in a couple of weeks, this election cycle that's going to happen. And I think you're going to see people settle in more, and they've got to make the investments. The labor market is not there to support this, and the general economy is continuing to grow. So we feel very good positioned to be able to help people as they grow into those markets. And there's a lot of fringe 3PLs that are stepping up and coming into the space. You've got a differentiation in terms of the top tier 1 3PLs, but there's a lot that are in that direct to consumer that are stepping in, and they're going to be the ones that make the investments that the next level up. And that's what we enjoy doing. Yeah. I mean, it's not, we can sell the big multi-million-dollar fully automated technology system, but we also enjoy just helping those customers that are ready for their first step into automation. And maybe automation to some people is just putting in some conveyor. That we call it mechanization, but I'm pretty bullish on the future. I think you're going to see more people because the labor's not going anywhere and the demand's not going anywhere. And as long as we can maintain inflation and control it, and the Fed gets that right, and we continue to control it, I think you're going to see people open up and start spending, and they're going to have to, or they're going to get left behind.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that was a good point there at the end too, Jimmy, of just labor. You know, there's always been the lack of availability, but also we are seeing increased wages within warehousing that results in a lot more money per person, which allows you to now justify some of that technology that you may not have seen in the past. So with the increased prices that we're seeing and increased labor cost, we're not necessarily yet seeing that same increase along some of the offerings that we provide. Their pricings remain relatively static, which results in this kind of inflection point where now what maybe wasn't justified 3 to 4 years ago will be justified in the next 3 to 4 years if we continue the same trend that we are. So I think once again, and that's not about replacing people. I think Jimmy mentioned it well earlier. It's just supplementing. I mean, goods to person technology, it gets sometimes a bad rap of replacing people's jobs, but it's like, look, nobody wants to walk 10 miles a day in a hot warehouse. All it's doing is bringing it to you, right? Making your life where you can now focus on the pick versus the walk. So I think we will continue to see more and more of that, especially with the labor. But beyond that, I think people they want to have technology. We're seeing people I want to automate. And if we ask them why, because we don't believe in just selling somebody exactly what they want, we challenge them. And we tell every customer that. But I think part of it is just people want technology to have technology. They want to be a part of the trend. They look at themselves and they think that they're behind if they don't have some version of robotics or software or anything, right? So that won't go anywhere. Robotics and technology is only going to continue to climb, as I'm sure you would believe as well. So we're excited for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think really great points there all around, especially around, the labor market itself. As you said, I mean, it's not only a question of is the labor there, but, the price of labor it just continues to grow. And, especially for some of those more challenging and skilled roles, like I think I saw someplace, reach truck drivers for like $30 an hour or something like that, or even more in some cases, which is, pretty wild to think about. Yeah. Right. And I mean, I think, all those things are certainly very interesting. And I think, we're starting to see some of that consolidation on the technology side. Like lately we've seen some, companies getting acquired or, closing down or selling off partial of that. And I think it is really interesting too, to see kind of these mid-market 3PLs, as you mentioned there, Jim, kind of stepping up to the plate a little bit and making these investments to take themselves to that next level and carry on. So really interesting to see all around what's happening in the market, and obviously always interesting to get some perspective from you guys as well at Zion Solution Groups too. And really appreciate you coming on and talking with me here today and getting these kind of maybe insider insights a little bit from what you guys are seeing in the market, and definitely appreciate the conversation around humanoids as well, as I think that's kind of in the back of everybody's head or top of mind right now in the cycle out there. So really appreciate you both coming on and talking to me today. If people are interested in learning more about Zion Solutions Group or getting in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, you can find us on LinkedIn. We're very active on LinkedIn. There's Zion Solutions Group. It's pretty easy. You can type it in and find it. Our website's actually a little different because we had to find a website that would work. It's the ZSG spelled out .com. So you can find us at ZSG.com. You can contact us there. We're not hard to find. It's such a small industry. If you know somebody that knows somebody, we're pretty easy folks to talk to, and just, reach out. We'd love to talk to you. And thanks for having us on. We've got a podcast too that you were part of, and we call it the TZE, the Zion Experience. And much like you, Kevin, we try to bring on interesting people to talk to and just have good conversations. So we'd always welcome people. If they're already listening to podcasts, you want another one in your life, then you could check ours out. Jordan's a better host than I am of it, but you can sit on and listen to it.
Yeah, sure.
Definitely check out the podcast, the Zion Experience, and definitely we will put all of that information at thenewwarehouse.com as well, so people can find it easily. So Jim and Jordan, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Enjoyed this episode? Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, and for more content from the New Warehouse, find us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Links to subscribe can be found in the show notes, and for everything The New Warehouse, head to thenewwarehouse.com.